So now we're going to talk about key terms and key things we'll need to know in our second unit, DCM development. So the first thing we need to know is what a serge seam finish is. In the past, we've used a zigzag seam finish, which is effective but not necessarily pretty and not necessarily durable in the long run. And so we're fortunate enough to have overlock machines or sergers that we use to finish the raw edge of our fabric. So a serge seam finish is a kind of seam finish that sews an overlock stitch. This stitch that you see in this image is called an overlock stitch, and it casts over the edge of one or two pieces of fabric by using the serger machine. The serger can also cut the edges of the fabric to give it a clean look, so you can actually turn a blade on or off to trim the fabric as you sew. Pattern symbols. So there are several different pattern symbols that you'll know on your pattern pieces when you go to cut them out when using a commercial pattern. So what do they look like? There might be a solid black circle, a dot, a square, or a triangle. And what are those telling me? These are used to help match or join garment sections, especially in areas that are gathered or eased. So you might know a circle and it says on a pattern direction, for example, align the dot from the center front pattern piece to the arm pattern piece. And so it's very important that you indicate these dots on your fabric by transferring them with tailor's chalk or transfer paper of some sort, so that you know where they're talking about on the garment or on the pattern piece. A triangle or a notch might help you align the pieces together. It might say line up the notches from the pant leg to the cuff, and this will help you know where to line up the fabric. The cutting line is a heavy line that outlines the pattern piece. It tells you where to cut. It's important that you note your size. So if it says you're a medium, you want to follow that medium line. It can get confusing when there's several lines, so sometimes I go through and highlight where I should cut, especially in corners and places where the lines are close together. Sometimes there's a little pair of scissors that indicates this is where you should cut. Next is the stitching line. So this line is indicated by a dashed line. It's usually 5/8 inch inside the cutting line. It tells you where you should sew. Not all pattern pieces indicate this, but some do, which can be very helpful. Notches, as I mentioned before, are usually outward triangles or diamonds that extend beyond the cutting line. They are used for matching seams and joining garment pieces. Always cut notches outward. So you're going to cut them outward, and eventually they will be sewn into the seam allowance and then serged or seam finished off, so you'll never see them. A fold line. A fold line is a solid line with a curved arrow or almost looking like a bracket, and that tells me to place the pattern piece on the fold of fabric in order to mirror that pattern piece. An adjustment or alteration line is two parallel lines, and it will usually say next to it lengthen or shorten here, and this shows you if you wanted to make your pants a little bit longer, if you were especially tall, or your sleeves a little longer, you could do that at that section. The grain line. Grain line is very important. It looks like a solid line with arrows at both ends. The grain line must run parallel to the selvage of the fabric unless otherwise noted. This will ensure that your fabric is straight and that the lines of the fabric or the stitches of the fabric are even and not wonky. The selvage. The selvage is the firmly woven edge that runs the length of the fabric on both sides, and I can help you if you're confused on which edge is your selvage of your fabric. This is review from Unit 1. The lengthwise grain is the grain of the fabric that is always parallel to the selvage. So if you're looking for the lengthwise grain, find the selvage, and you'll find your lengthwise grain.